Outside the cave, it began to get dark, and although outside it was calm, inside the cave, a mutant beast appeared, opened its mouth and began to roar, indicating that it was ready to attack. But just before the beast even had the chance to attack, Liu Sheng unsheathed the spear, leaped up, and while the blade was surrounded by powerful thunders, moved at an incredible speed and effortlessly cut the beast's jaw in half. The beast could not avoid staying in shock. It did not know what had just happened. While Liu Sheng's body was surrounded by flames, he began to look at the beast with a calm gaze. The pendant that he had given to Snowy had a seed of his spiritual energy. It was like a tracking system. But now he could not feel the location, which meant that he was not close enough. He grabbed the spear tightly, began to advance quickly, and with a look full of determination decided to explore the entire cave and kill each one of the beasts to find Snowy. He clenched his fist tightly, landed on the ground, and began to inspect the surroundings. Not far from the area there was a group of mutant beasts, which were shocked to see that a martial artist had entered the cave and was looking for a fight. Liu Sheng moved his foot forcefully to the side, creating golden thunder. He began to use his power, and at that moment, fire and chunks of ice appeared. While he was holding the spear with one hand, he tightly clenched the fist of the other and started looking towards the ground. While his body was surrounded by flames, the ground began to freeze. Little by little, the ice began to spread throughout the cave, until several seconds later, it reached the beasts and started to freeze their feet, leaving them immobile. The beasts began to look at the ground, and upon seeing ice, they couldn't help but feel somewhat confused, as they didn't know what was happening and how it was possible for someone to control the spiritual energy of fire and ice. Liu Sheng's eyes began to shine. He started to look at the beasts with a gaze full of hatred and gave them the order to die. Upon feeling his energy, more beasts that were in the area appeared, and they began to advance towards him, thinking he was an easy prey. Seeing this, Liu Sheng decided to clear the path and not stand idly by. He started advancing towards the beasts, and began using his power, releasing a powerful energy similar to that of demons. The flames that were around his body became more intense, his eyes filled with fury, and he began to use his martial will. Just before the beasts could make another move, Liu Sheng moved at an inhuman speed, and in the blink of an eye, swung the spear precisely and attacked several beasts, cutting their bodies into pieces. While the pieces of the beasts were falling to the ground, Liu Sheng clenched his fist and simply started walking. Another mutant beast appeared, and Liu Sheng came to the conclusion that at this rate it was going to be too late to save Snowy. He grabbed the spear tightly with both hands, jumped up, and without much effort, cut the beast's neck, causing it to open its mouth and start screaming in agony. With a desperate look, Liu Sheng began to look at the ground. He had to get to her side immediately. Several seconds later, while holding the spear with one hand, he landed softly on the ground. Then his body began to emit a golden energy. He jumped and decided to change tactics. Two mutant beasts in the area were shocked to see this. Liu Sheng extended the spear backward, and with a serious look he used the power of divine manifestation, and the spear began to be surrounded by an intense flame. Using all his strength, he used the technique called piercing and threw the spear towards the mutant beasts. It shot out towards them and began to massacre the mutant beasts that were in its path as if they were mere ants. The attack was so powerful that even a great curtain of smoke was created behind Liu Sheng. The spear, which was surrounded by the intense energy of Liu Sheng, not only began to kill the beasts, but also started to destroy part of the cave floor. Although it seemed that the spear was moving randomly, in reality Liu Sheng was controlling it. Several seconds later, it hit against the cave wall, and the energy inside the spear began to condense at a single point until several seconds later, a great explosion was created. The explosion was so powerful that it destroyed the ground of the cave and created a big hole. Liu Sheng approached the hole, clenched both fists, started to look down, and realized that she was right below here. He gathered momentum, and while his body was emitting some powerful thunders, with a determined look, he began to descend through the cave, asking Snowy to wait for him. Liu Sheng's body transformed into golden energy. He began to propel himself against the walls, first reaching level 14, then reaching level 15. Several minutes later, he reached level 40. With a serene look, he began to look down. He was moving at such an incredible speed that his body was leaving a trail of energy along the way. He began to use his power to track the necklace he had given to Snowy, and his eyes started to shine. He felt that each time he was closer to her. In front of Liu Sheng there was a wall made of rock. He clenched his fist, and while it was surrounded by flames, he started to move towards the wall and prepared to destroy it, since he felt that Snowy was behind this wall. Using a small part of his power, he struck the wall forcefully, transferring all the energy that was around his body to the wall, creating a small explosion. Once the wall broke, Lu Sheng couldn't help but be somewhat surprised at what his eyes were seeing, but still remained calm and couldn't help wondering what was happening. In front of him was a beast with thousands of teeth and a tongue full of drool. It had its mouth open and was sleeping. Upon sensing Lu Sheng's presence, the macrophage worm rose, began to stare at him and couldn't help but become enraged, causing its body to start emitting a suffocating purple energy. In comparison to this mutant beast, Lu Sheng seemed like a simple ant. He began to observe the beast with a furious look. Snowy's energy was rapidly weakening, which could mean that she didn't have much time left. The worm understood that he was not like the other humans, so charging headfirst into attack would be seeking death. It changed tactics, opened its mouth, began to create a burst of energy and prepared to attack. Once it prepared the attack, it opened its mouth even wider and launched a powerful burst of energy filled with thunder towards Lu Sheng. As little by little the burst of energy was descending upon Lu Sheng, he simply raised his head, began to watch as the attack was slowly approaching and remained still. Seeing that this worm had been the one who had hurt Snowy, he became angrier than ever before, clenched his fist tightly and began to condense all the energy into a single point. Once the burst of energy got close enough, Lu Sheng jumped and forcefully struck the burst of energy, and without much effort his energy countered the worm's energy, blocking and destroying the burst of energy. He began to advance towards the worm, and upon seeing this, it couldn't help but be shocked and start to feel intense terror and begin to sweat profusely. While Lu Sheng's body was surrounded by blue energy, he began to stare at the beast, and it didn't take long for him to realize that Snowy was inside its body. He began to use his power and his body transformed into energy. He landed inside the beast's mouth and launched a powerful attack downward. As little by little the attack was piercing the body of the worm. With a desperate look, he launched another attack again, and gave it the order to return him to Snowy. The fragile body of the beast was not able to resist. Lu Sheng transformed into sharp energy, and he began to cut the body of the beast in half, causing it to start screaming in agony. At the same time, inside the beast's stomach was Snowy. She was lying on the ground and was still alive, for now she was just unconscious. The sticky tentacles were wrapped around her body to prevent her from escaping. Due to this, her entire body was covered in sticky slime. At that moment, a golden energy that was becoming more intense started to become visible. Upon feeling the energy, Snowy slowly began to open her eyes, and while she was blushing thought that this light was death. She began to think about Lu Sheng, closed her eyes and couldn't help but start crying, thinking that death was coming to find her. The golden energy reached the beast's stomach, destroying the tentacles into pieces and freeing Snowy. Lu Sheng started calling out to her and she couldn't help but be perplexed and somewhat confused. While little by little the blood of the mutant beast was falling to the ground, she brought her hand to her chest, started looking to one side and with a confused look began to wonder what was happening. At that moment, someone put their hand under her arm. Lu Sheng appeared and picked her up in his arms, started looking at her and with a pleasant smile told her that he had come to find her. She placed a hand on his chest, and upon seeing Lu Sheng she couldn't help but start blushing like a tomato. With a loving look, she began to blush even more upon seeing that Lu Sheng had come to save her. Lu Sheng simply started to look at her, began to smile, and couldn't help but feel happy and relieved that she was okay. While the petals were falling to the ground, he approached her, started looking at her in the eyes, and decided it was time to go home. She started looking back at Lu Sheng in the eyes and while she was blushing, responded with a yes, adding that everyone should subscribe to Daily Manhwas to see the next part. This is the end of the video. If you guys want to see the next part, then don't forget to subscribe and like the video.